Ronda, Charlotte, and Becky compete in a Beat the Clock challenge. Kurt Angle takes on Samoa Joe, and Drew McIntyre gets an answer from Roman Reigns. This is Scaled, the show where we look at Raw and SmackDown and rate every segment on a scale of 1 to 10. We're looking at Raw live from Boston, Massachusetts. This episode of Raw opens with an announcement that the WrestleMania main event, the very last match to take place, will be for the Raw Women's Championship. Ronda Rousey defending against Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, the first time in history that women will main event a WrestleMania. It's then announced that Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte will be competing in a Beat the Clock challenge against all members of the Riot Squad. Ronda Rousey is first as she comes out and makes a promise to tap out both Becky and Charlotte at the same time. She then takes full credit for the women's match being in the main event and goes on to mock the Beat the Clock challenge as just another gimmick match. The Riot Squad comes out, followed by Becky, who states that Ronda's been handed everything and how the main event will really end with her holding the championship held high as she has one foot on top of Ronda Rousey's skull. Charlotte's out next, saying that their match is in the main event, not because of what Becky's done for the last 6 months or for what Ronda Rousey's done for the last year, but for what she's done for the last 7 years, which is why she was handpicked by Vince McMahon himself. The first match gets underway as Sarah Logan tries to outsmart Ronda Rousey by having her run around the ring a couple times, but they end up in the ring and eventually Ronda has the armbar locked in and has Sarah Logan tapping out within 1 minute and 25 seconds. Next up is Charlotte versus Ruby, but Charlotte is unable to beat the clock. After that, Charlotte attacks Becky Lynch, allowing Liv Morgan to gain an upper hand. But still, Becky is able to overcome Liv Morgan and roll her up within 1 minute and 18 seconds. This entire segment is going to get a 9. This was a great way to kick off Raw and build toward that WrestleMania main event. Finn Balor is put in a handicap match against Bobby Lashley and Jinder Mahal, with the Singh brothers and Leo Rush at ringside. With the odds totally stacked against them, Finn Balor is still able to win a match and earn an opportunity at WrestleMania to regain the Intercontinental Championship. Giving this a 6.5. This is kind of disappointing because this cancels any rumors of the Demon taking on the Phenom. Throughout the night, Elias is seen in several different locations in New York City. The first is in Times Square, the second is in front of Madison Square Garden, and the third is playing his guitar for money, which is eventually stolen from him. I'm combining all three of these segments and giving it a 5.5. I am beginning to wonder who's going to interrupt Elias's WrestleMania musical performance. Ricochet and Aleister Black are in a great match with the Revival, giving this a 7.5. Just a little curious as to where this is headed, because Ricochet and Aleister Black are also in the finals of the Dusty Rhodes Classic, and if they compete against the War Raiders for the NXT Tag Team Championships at TakeOver New York and have a match at WrestleMania, possibly against the Revival for the Raw Tag Team Championships, they will be the first two people ever to compete both at a TakeOver event and at a WWE pay-per-view the following night. Drew McIntyre comes out next and begins talking trash about Roman's family, trying to egg him on so that he'll accept the challenge. Giving this an 8, Roman comes out and clarifies that Roman accepts the challenge for WrestleMania, but Joe is the one telling McIntyre to keep his family out of his mouth. Great storytelling here, good building to their match, and great promos from both of these guys. When we come back from commercial, McIntyre is walking backstage. He's approached and challenged by Ambrose to a last man standing match, giving this a 7. After that, Sasha Banks takes on Natalya, who ends up winning again via disqualification, but I'm going to give this a 7 this week because their match lasted a little bit longer and it seemed like they had more time to plan it out. Nia and Tamina did interfere again and caused the disqualification win for Natalya, but this allowed Beth Phoenix to take out both Nia and Tamina, which led the crowd to begin erupting with "You Still Got It" chants. A little later on, Sasha and Bayley are approached backstage by Charlie, where Sasha says that she'll take on all opponents, assuming this means the Iconics, Nia and Tamina, as well as Beth and Natalya. So like I predicted last week, it sounds like this is going to be a fatal 4-way match for the Women's Tag Team Championships at WrestleMania. It's announced that the Hart Foundation, both Bret and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, are both going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame as a tag team this year. This isn't going to get a rating, but it is worth mentioning that Bret will be the 4th two-time Hall of Famer, and he will be the 3rd two-time Hall of Famer from this particular class. Kurt's being interviewed backstage when he's approached by Baron Corbin, whose promo still feels like they need work. I mean, other people's promos have felt like they've improved, but Corbin's promos still feel like he's reading from a script. Giving this a 6, I heard rumors that this match won't even happen at WrestleMania. Next up, we have a moment of bliss with Braun Strowman and Saturday Night Live's Colin Jost and Michael Chi joining them live from satellite. I'm giving this segment a 4.5. I'm just really not into this whole Braun Strowman beating the hell out of these two. I don't even know what to call them. I don't think they're very funny, so I'm not referring to them as comedians. But this segment basically was to include both Michael and Colin into the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, which I think is kind of ridiculous. After that, we get a rematch from last week where Baron Corbin takes on Apollo Crews. But this time, Baron Corbin wins. I'm giving it a 5.5. Because what was the point of having Corbin lose to Apollo last week? Out next is Seth Rollins, who cuts a pretty good promo. I'm going to give a 7.5. Eventually, Paul Heyman comes out. These two go back and forth for a minute, and Paul Heyman cuts a terrific promo, as always. Next up is quite possibly one of my favorite moments of the night, Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe. No, this match wasn't as good as their classics over in TNA. It was a little slow paced, but it was still an awesome sight to see both of these guys competing inside of a WWE ring. For these two guys to have one last match was really awesome. I'm glad that WWE allowed these guys to have one last match. I'm giving it a 6.5. Also, it was mentioned after this match that Kurt Angle would be on SmackDown Live, where he will take on AJ Styles for one last time. It's really awesome that Kurt Angle is being allowed to have these matches with his former rivals from TNA. Triple H then comes out and cuts a promo on Batista, giving it a 7. It wasn't bad, but in the beginning, he tried coming off as incredibly humble, but in this instance, he just was not able to pull it off. He eventually gets to the point of the matter, which is that Batista wants Triple H to put his career on the line, as stated in a letter drawn up by his lawyers, so Triple H agrees. In the main event of the night, Dean Ambrose takes on Drew McIntyre in the Last Man Standing match. Good, solid match, as always, from these two. I'm giving it 7.5. Kind of thought that Roman would get involved at some point, but he didn't, and McIntyre was able to win clean. Overall, Raw is going to get a 6.78 for this week. Stay tuned for my next episode of Scaled for SmackDown Live. Thanks for watching. Don't hesitate to leave me a comment below. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. Check me out on Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. I appreciate any help anyone can give. Thanks, and have a great day.